guys. I'm going to read to you another Miss Smith book. You'll have to tell me if you like the Miss Smith books because I can read more of those. Um, I would love to hear you do some read alouds of your own. So if you are in the Facebook group, you can go ahead and do that or send me a link. So let me get started. Miss Smith Reads Again by Michael Garland. Each new day meant Miss Smith would read a different tale from her incredible storybook. This book was like no other. When she read from in the classroom, would change the story and would come alive. And when it was over, everything would whoosh back into the book. Miss Smith would always remind the class when she began to read, "Remember, class, don't interfere with the characters or you'll change the story and you won't end the way it should. The story has to end, otherwise it won't go back into the book." One day, Miss Smith said, "Today we have a very special story. Arthur Conan Doyle's The Lost World." Zach was so excited because this story was about dinosaurs. Zach loved dinosaurs. As soon as Miss Smith started to read, the classroom began to change into the deepest, steamiest, most remote jungle of the Amazon. Then the class found themselves on a fallen tree, the bridged gap between the outside world and the steep cliffs of the plateau that was called the Lost World. "Don't look down," Zach warned as one by one they crossed over. When they reached the other side, they could feel the air was different. They heard strange bellowing sounds echoing through the trees, and they saw some men off the distance threading their way through the prehistoric rainforest. Two of them wore khaki suits and helmets and carried backpacks. "Who are they?" asked Sue Ann. "They're dinosaur hunting explorers," answered Miss Smith. "Remember, don't bother them because you'll change the story and it may not end up the way it should." They followed along until they came close enough to hear the two explorers arguing. Miss Smith and the class hid in the bushes and listened. "Professor Challenger, it is impossible for dinosaurs to still exist." "There is simply no evidence," said the tall explorer. "Professor Summerlee, I beg to disagree," answered the short one. As Challenger and Summerlee continued their heated debate, a huge Tyrannosaurus Rex stole behind them. Zach's eyes stared at the jagged fangs of the T-Rex, but before Miss Smith could stop him, Zach screamed, "Look out behind you!" Both explorers turned, then Professor Challenger snatched Summerlee away just because the Tyrannosaurus Rex pounced on the pair of them. "Run!" yelled Miss Smith as the class scattered in every direction. "Do you need any more evidence, Professor Summerlee?" asked Zach as they looked for a place to hide. Zach knew that Tyrannosaurus was very nearsighted, so they ducked into some bushes, and the king of the dinosaurs raced off without eating any more. Luckily, the professor, Zach, and the rest of the class managed to escape the T-Rex and find one another, but Miss Smith was nowhere to be seen. "Where is Miss Smith?" asked Sue Ann. "I don't see her anymore." Just then, another dinosaur came into view, and some kids got ready to run away again. But Zach told them, "Don't worry, that's a stegosaurus. They're herbivores. Stegosaurs eat only vegetation, so they're harmless, just like big cows." "We need to find Miss Smith right now. Maybe she's in danger. Don't forget, she has finished reading the story." Zach told class. "Look," said Sue Ann, "footprints. Let's follow them." It was easy for the class to follow Miss Smith's trail because her sneakers left very distinctive footprints in the mud. They followed the tracks for the short distance until suddenly they disappeared. "Help! Help!" came the faint voice from the high above them. It was Miss Smith. She was trapped in the pterodactyl's nest on the tree branch hanging way out over the steep ravine. The flying dinosaur must, oh ravine, the flying dinosaur must have snatched her up and put her in the nest. We have to save her, everyone cried. I have a plan, said Zack. He quickly told the class what to do. They broke off the branches and some of them climbed the tree, and when they reached the nest, they trashed their leafy weapons around until they scared the pterodactyl away. Miss Smith collected herself and carefully climbed out the nest and down the tree. Thank you, class. You saved me, Miss Smith said. Now I think it's time we finish reading the story and go back to her classroom. She started reading, and by the time she got to the last line, the dinosaurs, the explorers, the lost world had gone back into the book, and their classroom had returned to normal. Everything from the story had returned into the book except one thing. Somehow, Zack was able to hold on to a pterodactyl egg. The class crowded around the egg for a closer look. Then they heard it, a tiny scratching sound, then a louder tapping, and then an even louder cracking, then screech! The little flying reptile burst from its shell and flapped around the room over their heads. Before they could lose their open mouth, the baby pterodactyl flew out of the window and off into the sky. As Zack watched the winged creature soar off into the clouds, he couldn't help think of the wonderful places reading Miss Smith's incredible storybook has taken them. I wonder what tomorrow's story will be. Hmm. Well, I hope you guys like that book. Have a great weekend. Bye.